Welcome to Sleep Easy, where we invite you to unwind and let go of the day's busyness. I'm grateful you've chosen to spend this quiet moment with us. Tonight's story is called The Whispering Willow, a journey through the Enchanted Valley. In this peaceful tale, you'll follow Emma, a young woman who embarks on a journey into the mystical Willow Hollow, a valley where nature thrives in perfect harmony. Along the way, she meets magical creatures, listens to the whispers of ancient trees, and uncovers secrets that restore the valley's balance. As Emma discovers the true magic of love, healing, and connection, she learns that the peace she seeks has always been within her. Let the gentle rhythm of the valley guide you into a restful sleep. But before we begin, take a moment to settle in. Gently close your eyes, take a slow, deep breath, and feel each exhale release the tension in your body. Let the worries of the day melt away, allowing your whole body to relax into this peaceful moment. As you find your rhythm in the calm of your breathing, let us guide you into a world of magic and serenity. Here, the night is soft, the stars shimmer quietly above, and time moves at its own gentle pace. Let go of the day's troubles as you journey with us, where peace surrounds you and dreams are ready to unfold. The late afternoon sun cast a warm, golden hue over the landscape as Emma's car rolled into the quaint town of Willow Hollow. The air smelled of wildflowers and fresh pine, a stark contrast to the exhaust fumes and constant noise of the city she had left behind. It was her first real vacation in years, and though she'd chosen the town for its quiet charm, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was meant to be here for a reason she couldn't quite explain. The town itself was picturesque, like something out of a storybook. Cobblestone streets wound through clusters of weathered cottages, with flower boxes spilling over with vibrant blooms. A few townsfolk waved as she passed, their smiles warm but tinged with curiosity. At the center of Willow Hollow stood a stone fountain adorned with carvings of birds and trees, water trickling softly from its top into a circular basin below. Emma parked her car near an inn that looked like it had been standing for centuries. Its wooden sign creaked in the breeze, proudly declaring its name, the Restful Sparrow. The innkeeper, an elderly woman named Clara, greeted her at the door with a tray of freshly baked cookies. "You must be Emma," Clara said, her voice as warm as the cookies she offered. "Your grandmother spoke so fondly of you. Welcome to Willow Hollow." Emma smiled, surprised but comforted by the mention of her late grandmother. "Thank you. She used to tell me the most wonderful stories about this place." "Well, there's plenty of wonder here if you know where to look," Clara replied, her eyes twinkling. After settling into her cozy room, a quaint space with floral wallpaper and a view of the forest, Emma decided to take a walk. The evening air was cool, and the faint chirping of crickets filled the silence. She strolled past the fountain and into the woods beyond the town's edge, following a narrow dirt path that seemed well-worn but deserted. Her grandmother had often spoken of these woods, calling them a gateway to a magical valley. As a child, Emma had been enchanted by the tales, though she had dismissed them as fantasy as she grew older. Yet something about the stillness of the forest and the golden light filtering through the trees made her pause. She stopped at a wooden bench nestled beneath a towering oak tree. It bore an inscription: "To those who seek wonder, may this be your first step." Emma ran her fingers over the carved words, a shiver of anticipation coursing through her. Nearby, the faint sound of running water caught her attention. She turned toward it, her curiosity piqued. The path seemed to glow faintly as she walked, the light dimming with each step as the sun sank lower in the sky. Finally, she reached a small brook, its water sparkling in the twilight. A massive willow tree stood at its edge, its branches swaying gently even though the air was still. As she approached, Emma felt a peculiar sensation, as though the tree were watching her. The whisper of its leaves was soft but deliberate, like the murmured words of a dream slipping just out of reach. She tilted her head, listening, but the sound was lost in the gentle gurgle of the brook. For a moment, she felt foolish standing there, waiting for a tree to speak. But deep down, a sense of belonging rooted her in place. This was the beginning of something, she was sure of it. "Welcome to Willow Hollow, indeed," she murmured to herself, before turning back toward the inn. As she walked away, the willow's branches swayed once more, their whispers fading into the deepening night. Something magical had begun, and Emma had taken her first step into a world she never imagined could exist. Emma awoke the next morning to the soft chirping of birds outside her window. Golden sunlight spilled across her bed, casting playful patterns on the wooden floor. It felt as though the town itself had whispered her awake, nudging her to explore more of its charm. After a quick breakfast of freshly baked scones and tea prepared by Clara, Emma decided to return to the woods. She retraced her steps from the previous evening, following the same path that led to the willow tree. The forest seemed alive in the morning light, with dappled shadows dancing beneath towering oaks and maples. The gentle hum of nature surrounded her, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of a bird, and, most prominently, the soothing murmur of the brook. When she reached the willow tree, the air felt different, almost expectant. The brook glimmered in the sunlight, and its sound seemed to take on a rhythm, like the beginnings of a melody. Emma knelt by the water's edge, her fingers brushing against the cool surface. As she sat there, the brook's gentle murmur grew louder, more distinct. The sound was no longer random, it was a tune, soft and lilting, as though the water itself were singing. Emma tilted her head, mesmerized. The melody wrapped around her like a warm embrace, its notes resonating deep within her chest. She found herself humming along, the tune familiar though she couldn't place where she had heard it before. The sound was soothing, but it also carried a hint of longing, as if the brook were calling out to her. "Beautiful, isn't it?" The voice startled her, and she turned quickly to find a figure perched on a low-hanging branch of the willow tree. It was an owl, but not an ordinary one. His feathers were a blend of soft grays and whites, and his eyes, large and golden, seemed to hold a lifetime of wisdom. Who? Emma began, then laughed nervously. Or should I say, what are you? The owl chuckled, a deep, comforting sound. I am Barnaby, the guardian of this part of the valley. And you, Emma, seem to have a curious heart. How do you know my name? She asked, half wondering if she was still dreaming. I know many things, Barnaby replied, hopping closer. And I've been watching you since you arrived. You heard the brook's song, didn't you? Emma nodded, her curiosity outweighing her disbelief. Yes, but how is that possible? It's just water. Nothing is just anything in the Enchanted Valley, Barnaby said with a knowing smile. This brook carries the stories of the valley, whispers of its past and hints of its future. Not everyone can hear it, though. Only those with an open heart and a willingness to listen. Emma glanced back at the water, its melody now softer, blending seamlessly with the rustle of leaves. What is it trying to tell me? That, Barnaby said, is for you to discover. But know this, the brook's song is only the beginning. The valley has many voices, each with its own story to share. If you're willing, they will guide you to something far greater than you can imagine. Emma's mind raced with questions, but before she could ask more, Barnaby spread his wings and soared into the sky, his form disappearing among the treetops. She sat in stunned silence, the brook's song filling the space where his voice had been. Feeling a pull she couldn't ignore, Emma followed the brook's winding path deeper into the forest. The melody seemed to guide her, growing louder at times, then fading as though urging her forward. Along the way, she noticed small details she had overlooked before, wildflowers blooming in vibrant clusters, moss-covered stones that sparkled in the sunlight, and even tiny footprints pressed into the dirt path. The brook led her to a clearing where the trees opened up to reveal a crystal-clear pool. The water was so still it looked like glass, reflecting the sky and surrounding trees in perfect detail. At its center stood a large stone with intricate carvings, symbols that resembled those she had seen on the willow tree the night before. Emma knelt by the edge of the pool, her reflection shimmering in the water. The song grew louder, filling her mind with a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. It was as if the valley itself were welcoming her, inviting her to stay and listen. And so, she did. Sitting by the pool, Emma closed her eyes and let the song of the river wash over her, unaware that her journey into the Enchanted Valley had only just begun. The clearing around the tranquil pool grew quieter as Emma sat, letting the brook's song envelop her. Time seemed to stretch, the minutes melting into one another, until the sound of rustling leaves broke her reverie. Lost in thought already, I see, came a deep, familiar voice. Emma opened her eyes and saw Barnaby perched on a low branch of a nearby oak tree. His golden eyes gleamed, and his feathers seemed to shimmer faintly in the dappled sunlight. "Barnaby," she said, her voice tinged with surprise and relief. "You came back." "I never truly left," the owl replied, his tone gentle. "This valley is my home, after all, And it seems it's becoming yours as well. Emma stood, brushing the dirt from her hands. I don't understand. Why me? Why is this valley revealing itself to me? Barnaby ruffled his feathers and gave a slow nod. Good questions, but the answers aren't simple. The valley chooses those who need it, and those it needs. You've listened to the brook's song, that's a start. Now, let's see if you're ready to hear more. What do you mean? She asked, her curiosity flaring. Barnaby flapped his wings and swooped down to a mossy boulder beside her. The valley holds secrets, Emma. Some are old as time, some are as fresh as this morning's dew. Each one is connected to the Whispering Willow, the heart of this place. It's been silent for too long, and its strength is waning. That's where you come in. Emma's brows knitted. But I don't know anything about magic or enchanted places. I'm just me. Exactly, Barnaby said with a knowing look. Sometimes it's not about what you know, but how you see the world. You're curious, open, and kind. That's why the valley called to you. But don't worry, you won't face this journey alone. Emma hesitated, processing his words. The mention of the Whispering Willow stirred something in her memory, a story her grandmother used to tell her, about a tree whose whispers carried the wisdom of the valley. Is this about the Whispering Willow? She asked. Barnaby tilted his head. Ah, you've heard of it. Good. Yes, the willow is the lifeblood of this place, but it's grown weak. The creatures of the valley can sense it, and soon, so will the outside world. If it fades, so does everything else here. Your task is to restore its strength. How? Barnaby blinked slowly, as if weighing his words. By listening, by learning, and by connecting with the valley's voices. They'll guide you, step by step. Start with the river's song. It will lead you to others who can help. Emma felt a mix of trepidation and determination. The valley had chosen her for a reason, and while she didn't fully understand it, she couldn't ignore the pull it had on her. As if sensing her resolve, Barnaby hopped closer. Good. Now, let me give you your first piece of advice. Trust your instincts. The valley speaks in whispers and symbols, not shouts. Be patient and keep your heart open. Where do I go from here? Emma asked. Follow the river, Barnaby said, gesturing with a sweep of his wing. It will take you to a place where the first key lies, a garden hidden in the depths of the forest. But beware, not all paths are as they seem. And remember, you are never truly alone here. With that, Barnaby spread his wings and soared into the sky, his silhouette vanishing against the canopy of trees. Emma stood by the pool, her reflection rippling in the water, feeling a newfound sense of purpose. She turned to the brook, its melody soft but persistent, and began walking along its edge. Each step felt like an answer to an unspoken call, the forest around her alive with possibility. The valley was waiting, and Emma was ready to discover its secrets. The brook's melody grew softer as Emma ventured deeper into the forest, its song weaving through the rustling leaves and chirping birds. The path along the water narrowed, framed by towering trees whose roots twisted like ancient fingers into the earth. Emma felt a quiet reverence in the air, as though the forest itself was watching her. Ahead, the brook widened into a gentle stream, its waters shimmering in the dappled sunlight. Nestled among the dense foliage was a bridge, or at least, what remained of one. Its stone pillars were moss-covered and cracked, and the wooden planks had long since rotted away, leaving only fragments clinging to the edges. Vines and wildflowers had claimed the ruins, softening its decay with nature's quiet touch. Emma stopped at the edge of the stream, her gaze fixed on the bridge. The path seemed to end here, and yet the brook's song urged her forward. She crouched near the water's edge, dipping her fingers into the cool current. The stream's melody grew clearer, almost as if it were trying to speak. "What are you trying to tell me?" she murmured. A soft rustling behind her made her turn. A fox with a sleek, copper-colored coat emerged from the underbrush, its bright eyes fixed on her. "Well, well," the fox said, his voice smooth and mischievous. "A traveler in the valley, and at the forgotten bridge, no less. You must be braver than you look." Emma blinked, momentarily startled. You can talk?" The fox tilted his head, his tail flicking playfully. "Of course, I can talk. Most of us here can, though some choose not to. Name's Oliver." "And you are?" "Emma," she replied, still marveling at the talking fox. "Do you know how to cross this bridge?" Oliver sat back on his haunches, his gaze turning thoughtful. "Ah, the bridge. It's seen better days, hasn't it? But crossing it isn't as simple as fixing the planks or finding another way around. This is no ordinary bridge, it's bound to the valley's magic. To cross, you'll need more than a pair of sturdy boots." Emma frowned. "What do you mean?" "The forgotten bridge remembers those who cross it," Oliver explained. "It holds the weight of their stories, their fears, their hopes. But over time, it's been abandoned, left to fade with its memories. If you want to cross, you'll have to remind it of what it's forgotten." Emma glanced at the crumbling structure, her chest tightening with uncertainty. "And how do I do that?" Oliver's eyes gleamed. "By offering it a story, your story. Speak to it, tell it why you're here, what you're seeking. Bridges in this valley are more than just stone and wood, they're connections between places and people. Give it a reason to connect with you." Emma hesitated, feeling the weight of Oliver's words. Taking a deep breath, she stepped closer to the bridge, her voice trembling slightly as she began. "I'm here because I'm searching," she said, "for something I've lost. for something I don't even fully understand yet. My grandmother used to tell me stories about this valley, about its magic and its secrets. I always thought they were just bedtime tales, but now I'm here, and I feel like I'm part of something bigger. Her voice grew steadier as she continued. I want to help the valley, to bring back what's been lost. And maybe, in doing that, I'll find what I've been missing, too. The brook's melody swelled, and the air around her grew still. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a faint glow began to emanate from the stone pillars, soft and golden, like fireflies awakening at dusk. The vines and flowers that covered the bridge shifted, pulling back to reveal sturdy new planks where the old ones had crumbled. Oliver's tail swished with approval. Well done, Emma. The bridge remembers you now. She stepped cautiously onto the bridge, the wood solid beneath her feet. As she crossed, she felt a strange warmth, as though the bridge itself were wrapping her in its memory. When she reached the other side, she turned back to see the glow fading, the bridge settling into its quiet watch once more. Not bad for a first test, Oliver said, trotting up beside her. But don't get too comfortable. The valley has plenty more surprises in store. Emma smiled, her confidence growing. I think I'm ready for them. The two continued along the brook, the path unfolding before them like a whispered invitation. The forgotten bridge had been crossed, and with it, Emma had taken another step deeper into the heart of the Enchanted Valley. The forest deepened as Emma and Oliver continued along the path, the light filtering through the canopy growing dimmer. The brook's song softened to a gentle hum, blending with the faint rustle of leaves and the occasional chirp of crickets. A sense of calm filled the air, but Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something awaited her just beyond the trees. What's ahead? Emma asked, her gaze flicking toward Oliver as he padded beside her. That, Oliver replied with a sly grin, depends on what you're ready to see. The fox's cryptic answer didn't surprise her anymore. Every creature she encountered in the valley seemed to speak in riddles. Yet there was comfort in Oliver's steady presence, and she found herself trusting him despite his playful demeanor. As they walked, the forest around them began to change. The trees grew taller, their trunks covered in silvery moss that seemed to shimmer faintly. The air turned cooler, carrying the earthy scent of damp leaves. Then, one by one, tiny golden lights appeared among the trees, floating like stars come to earth. Fireflies, Emma whispered, stopping to watch as the lights danced around her. Oliver chuckled. Not quite. These are lumenflies. They're drawn to places where magic lingers strongest. The fact that they're here means you're getting closer to something important. Emma reached out, and one of the glowing orbs hovered near her hand, its light pulsing softly. It felt warm, almost alive, and as she watched, images flickered in her mind: a rushing river, a grove of ancient trees, and a stone circle bathed in moonlight. What was that? She asked, her voice trembling. The lumen flies are showing you glimpses of the valley's past, Oliver said. Or maybe its future. Hard to tell sometimes. They're guardians of memory, keepers of the things this place holds dear. The lumen flies began to gather, their lights forming a trail that wound deeper into the forest. Emma followed them, her heart pounding with anticipation. The path narrowed, the trees pressing closer as the golden lights illuminated their way. After several minutes, they emerged into a small clearing surrounded by towering pines. At its center stood a stone pedestal, covered in the same intricate carvings Emma had seen at the pool. The lumen flies circled the pedestal in a slow, deliberate dance, their glow casting shifting patterns across the forest floor. Emma approached cautiously, her footsteps muffled by the soft moss. "What is this place?" Oliver sat back on his haunches, his tone uncharacteristically solemn. "A place of offering. The valley's magic is old, Emma, and it thrives on balance, on giving and receiving. If you're to continue your journey, you'll need to offer something of yourself here." Emma frowned. "Offer what?" "I don't have anything with me." "Not things," Oliver said gently. "The valley doesn't care about objects. It seeks what's within you, your thoughts, your memories, your truths. Step forward and place your hands on the pedestal. It will guide you." Her pulse quickened as she stepped closer. Taking a deep breath, she placed her palms on the cool, carved stone. At first, nothing happened. Then a warm sensation spread through her hands, and the lumen fly's light brightened, surrounding her in a golden glow. Images flooded her mind, her grandmother's stories, her own childhood wonder, and the loneliness she'd felt since losing the connection to those magical tales. She saw herself as a little girl, curled up by the fire, listening to her grandmother describe the Enchanted Valley. "I miss her," Emma whispered, her voice breaking. "I miss the way she made the world feel so full of possibility." The pedestal seemed to pulse beneath her hands, as if acknowledging her words. The glow of the lumen flies intensified, their lights swirling faster until they merged into a single beam that shot into the sky. When the light faded, Emma stepped back, feeling lighter, as though she'd left a piece of her sorrow behind. The carvings on the pedestal had changed, forming a new pattern, a willow tree surrounded by glowing fireflies. Oliver nodded approvingly. "You've done well, Emma. The valley hears you, and it remembers. Your offering has strengthened its magic, and in return, it will guide you to the next step." Emma turned to the lumen flies, which had resumed their gentle dance. They drifted toward the edge of the clearing, forming a path that led further into the forest. "Shall we?" Oliver asked, his tail flicking playfully. Emma smiled, her resolve stronger than ever. "Let's go." As they followed the trail of golden lights, Emma felt a newfound connection to the valley and its mysteries. The fireflies had shown her glimpses of its magic, but she knew there was much more to discover. And with Oliver by her side, she was ready to face whatever lay ahead. The path of lemonflies led Emma deeper into the heart of the forest, their soft, golden glow weaving between the tall pines. The air grew cooler with each step, the forest dense and hushed, as if holding its breath. Emma's thoughts were filled with wonder and anticipation, but also a growing sense of something magical and unknown, just beyond her reach. As the last of the fireflies disappeared into the shadows, the trees began to thin, revealing a secluded glade bathed in moonlight. The ground was covered in soft, velvety moss, and in the center, a garden unlike any Emma had ever seen unfolded before her. Vibrant flowers of all colors bloomed in the moonlight, some familiar, like roses and lavender, but many others that seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly glow. Tall, twisting vines of silver and gold clung to the trees, their leaves sparkling like stardust. A gentle breeze stirred the air, carrying the scent of jasmine, wild mint, and something sweet and unidentifiable. At the heart of the garden, a figure stood among the flowers. She was tall and slender, with long, flowing silver hair that shimmered in the moonlight like the softest silk. Her eyes, a deep shade of violet, seemed to reflect the garden itself, mysterious, ancient, and full of wisdom. "Welcome, Emma," the woman said softly, her voice as delicate as the wind rustling through the leaves. "I've been expecting you." Emma froze, her breath catching in her throat. "How do you know my name?" The woman smiled gently, a knowing glint in her eyes. "I've been watching over the valley for a long time. I am Alara, keeper of this garden and the secrets it holds. This is a sacred place, one that very few have the privilege to see. But your heart is pure, and the valley has chosen you to help restore what has been lost." Emma took a step forward, her curiosity piqued. "I don't understand. I'm just me. How can I help? I don't know anything about magic or ancient gardens." Alara's smile deepened, and she gestured toward the flowers that bloomed in radiant colors all around them. "You may not know it yet, but you are already connected to the magic of this place. The garden responds to those who seek it with an open heart. It grows and flourishes with every step you take, and in turn, it will offer you the knowledge you need to continue your journey." As Alara spoke, Emma felt the garden's energy surge around her, an almost palpable sense of life that hummed in the air. The flowers swayed as if welcoming her presence, and she could hear the faintest whispers, like the murmurs of ancient voices, carried on the breeze. "This garden is old," Alara continued, "older than the trees, older than the valley itself. It holds the memories of all who have come before you, and it is here that you will find the key to unlocking the valley's true power. But to do so, you must first understand its heart, its deepest secret." Emma's eyes widened. "What secret?" "The secret of the moonstone," Alara said, her tone turning serious. "Hidden within this garden is a stone, unlike any other. It is the source of the valley's magic, the heart of its very essence. But it has been lost for centuries, and without it, the valley's strength will continue to fade. You must find it, Emma. You are the only one who can. Emma's mind raced. A moonstone? A lost artifact that could restore the valley? It all sounded like something from one of her grandmother's stories. But this wasn't a story, it was real. How do I find it? She asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. Elara's eyes softened. The moonstone is not something you can simply find by searching the garden. It chooses its bearer, and only those who are truly ready can call it forth. You must listen to the garden, feel its pulse, and trust the path it reveals to you. But remember, the journey is not always straightforward. You will face challenges, and the garden will test you. Stay true to your heart, and you will find what you seek. Emma took a deep breath, the weight of Elara's words sinking in. She had come this far, and there was no turning back now. If the valley's magic was fading, then she had to do whatever it took to restore it. I'm ready, Emma said, her voice steady with resolve. I'll find the moonstone. Elara's smile returned, brighter this time. I knew you would. Follow the path of the flowers, Emma. They will guide you. And remember, trust the garden, for it will never lead you astray. With that, Elara turned in motion toward a winding path that led deeper into the garden. The flowers shifted to reveal the way, their petals glowing softly in the moonlight. Emma stepped forward, her heart filled with purpose. As she followed the path, the air around her seemed to hum with energy, and the garden's whispers grew louder, as if the very earth were speaking to her. She felt a strange connection to the place, like it was both familiar and completely new. The flowers, the trees, even the stones beneath her feet seemed to welcome her, urging her forward. The garden secret was waiting, and Emma knew that with each step, she was getting closer to unlocking the mystery of the moonstone and restoring the valley's magic. The journey had only just begun. The path wound deeper into the garden, and Emma could feel the subtle shift in the air, the kind of stillness that signals something extraordinary, just beyond the ordinary world. The flowers continued to glow softly, their colors changing with each step she took, as though the garden itself was alive and responding to her presence. Yet, despite the beauty and magic surrounding her, Emma couldn't help but feel the weight of her mission. The moonstone, the key to restoring the valley's magic, was somewhere out there. But where? The path began to narrow, leading her toward a small, crystal-clear brook that wound its way through the garden, its waters sparkling in the moonlight. The gentle rush of the stream filled the air with a peaceful, melodic sound. Emma paused, taking in the beauty of the scene. The brook seemed to whisper to her, its voice soft and melodic, like a lullaby. "Can you hear it?" she asked softly, more to herself than to anyone else. Oliver, who had been following silently at her side, gave a quiet chuckle. "Oh, I hear it. This is the talking brook." "The talking brook?" Emma repeated, looking down at the rippling water, curious. It talks? Oliver nodded. It does indeed. But only those who are truly attuned to the magic of the valley can understand it. You're beginning to hear its voice because you're getting closer to what you seek. Emma bent down, her fingertips grazing the water's surface. The brook's song seemed to shift, as if responding to her touch. A voice, gentle but clear, echoed in her mind. Emma. Her heart skipped a beat. It was the voice of the brook, and it felt both familiar and otherworldly. She straightened, looking around. Is someone there? The brook rippled, its waters shimmering as though smiling. Yes, I am here. I have been waiting for you. You seek the moonstone, do you not? Emma nodded, her thoughts racing. I do. But how do I find it? The brook's voice was calm and soothing. The moonstone is not found by force or by searching in the usual ways. It is not a treasure to be uncovered by digging or chasing. It can only be revealed to those who listen, who trust the flow of the land. You must let go of your fear and allow the valley to show you the way. Emma's brow furrowed in confusion. Let go of my fear? But how? This is all so overwhelming. I don't know where to begin. The brook's voice softened, like a comforting whisper. Fear is a shadow, Emma. It blocks the light of understanding. To find the moonstone, you must first understand your own heart. Trust that the valley has already chosen you. Let it guide you, for the path will not be clear to the eyes alone. Emma closed her eyes, the soft whisper of the brook calming her racing thoughts. She focused on her breathing, allowing herself to settle into the rhythm of the water, the flow of the world around her. She thought of her grandmother's stories, of how the valley had always been full of magic and wonder. For the first time, she realized she wasn't just a traveler passing through. She was part of something much bigger. Opening her eyes, Emma stood taller, a newfound sense of determination filling her chest. I understand, she said quietly. I have to trust the valley. Trust the magic. The brook's song swelled with approval, its waters sparkling brighter. Yes, Emma. Trust the flow of the land, and you will find what you seek. The moonstone is not hidden from you, it waits for you to recognize it. The stream's waters bubbled with a cheerful rhythm, and Emma could feel her worries begin to fade. There was still much to do, but she no longer felt so lost. As she stood by the edge of the brook, she realized that the next step in her journey was not to chase the moonstone, but to allow it to come to her. Thank you, Emma whispered to the brook, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. Oliver, who had been quietly observing, gave a satisfied nod. Well done. The brook has spoken, and now you are ready to follow its guidance. Emma looked ahead, the path before her now bathed in moonlight, its direction clearer than ever. She turned to Oliver with a renewed sense of purpose. "Let's keep going. I'm ready." As they continued along the path, the sound of the talking brook faded behind them, its voice still echoing in Emma's mind. She felt a deep connection to the valley's magic now, as if the land itself was alive and waiting for her to uncover its secrets. The moonstone was still ahead, but Emma knew that with each step, she was closer to unlocking its power and to restoring the magic that the valley so desperately needed. The air around Emma grew thicker as she ventured deeper into the garden, the path now winding through a dense mist that had begun to settle over the valley. The moon above shone dimly through the veil of fog, casting an ethereal glow over everything. The world around her seemed to be suspended in time, a quiet stillness settling over the land as if it too was waiting for something. Oliver padded silently by her side, his fur barely visible in the mist. Emma could see only the faint outline of him, his eyes glinting softly in the darkness. The fog seemed to move as if alive, swirling in patterns that made it feel as though the landscape was breathing, shifting in response to her presence. "This mist feels different," Emma murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's not like the fog I've seen back home." Oliver looked around, his nose twitching. "You're right. This is the mist of lost paths. It only appears when the valley is guiding someone towards something important. It will not harm you, but it can be confusing. The mist often distorts the path, making it hard to know which way to go. But the valley will never leave you lost for long." Emma nodded, trying to steady her breath. Her senses felt heightened in the thick fog, the air damp and cool against her skin. Every step felt like a journey into the unknown. She had no idea where the mist would take her, but she had learned to trust the valley's guidance, its signs, its whispers, its rhythms. As they continued forward, Emma noticed a faint light flickering ahead. It was soft, golden, like a candle in the dark. She squinted, unsure if it was a figment of the mist or something more tangible. "There," she said, pointing toward the glowing light. "Do you see it?" Oliver's ears perked up, and he nodded. "I see it. That's no ordinary light, Emma. It's a lantern. A lantern of the way, to be precise. It is a guide for those who are lost, a beacon for travelers. If we follow it, it will show us the path ahead." The light flickered and danced in the distance, bobbing gently as though someone was carrying it through the mist. Emma felt a strange pull toward it, as if it were calling to her. Without hesitation, she quickened her pace, moving toward the lantern's glow. The mist seemed to part slightly as she approached, as if it recognized her purpose. With each step, the air felt clearer, the weight of uncertainty lifting from her chest. The light grew brighter, revealing the figure of a person standing just ahead. As Emma drew closer, she saw the figure was cloaked in a flowing robe, their face hidden beneath the hood. The lantern they carried glowed with an inner warmth, casting a soft golden light over their features, though their eyes remained hidden in the shadows. The figure stood still, as if waiting for her. "Who are you?" Emma asked softly, feeling a mixture of awe and curiosity. The figure did not speak at first. Instead, they held out the lantern, tilting it slightly toward Emma as if offering it to her. The air around the lantern seemed to shimmer, and Emma felt a strange energy pulse from it, as if it held a power far beyond her understanding. "This is for you," the figure said in a voice that was both familiar and distant, as though it came from a dream. "The valley knows your heart, and it has sent me to guide you. Take this lantern, Emma, and let it light your way." Emma hesitated, her fingers brushing the edge of the lantern. The warmth from it was comforting, and yet she felt an unspoken weight in the gesture. She glanced at Oliver, who nodded encouragingly. "Take it," Oliver urged gently. "This lantern will guide you through the mist. It will show you the path that the valley wishes you to follow." With a deep breath, Emma reached forward and took the lantern. The moment her fingers made contact with the cool metal, she felt a surge of energy course through her, a rush of understanding flooding her mind. It was as though the lantern was alive, a piece of the valley's magic, and she had just unlocked its power. The figure did not speak again, but nodded once, as if satisfied with her choice. Slowly, the mist seemed to part further, revealing the path ahead more clearly. The lantern's light grew brighter in Emma's hands, casting long shadows across the garden and dispelling the fog in its immediate vicinity. "Follow the light, and trust it," the figure said softly, before they began to fade into the mist, their form melting back into the fog as though they had never been there. Emma stood still for a moment, the weight of the lantern in her hands grounding her. She could still feel the presence of the figure lingering in the air, a reassuring warmth. With a steadying breath, she turned back to Oliver. "Let's go," she said, her voice firmer now, her confidence growing with each step. The lantern in her hands pulsed softly, guiding her forward through the mist. With the valley's guidance and the lantern's light, Emma felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was no longer lost in the fog of uncertainty. The path was clear, and she was ready to continue her journey toward the moonstone, toward restoring the valley's magic. And with the lantern of the way leading her, she knew she would find the way forward. The soft glow of the lantern of the way illuminated the mist ahead, casting long shadows that danced along the path. The air felt alive with energy, each step Emma took feeling like a small echo in the vastness of the valley. The fog that had once obscured everything now parted easily in the lantern's light, as if acknowledging her presence and purpose. She held the lantern steadily, the warmth from it seeping into her hands, grounding her in the moment. Oliver walked at her side, his movements quieter than usual, as if he, too, could feel the weight of the journey ahead. There was a solemnity in the air now, a shift in the very atmosphere, as though the valley was watching them, guiding them. "Do you think we're getting closer to the moonstone?" Emma asked softly, her voice almost lost in the hush of the mist. Oliver's gaze never wavered, but his eyes glinted with knowing. I believe we are. The valley is guiding us, step by step. But remember, Emma, not all paths are what they seem. Sometimes, the way forward is hidden, even when it feels like you've reached a dead end. Emma furrowed her brow, feeling a knot form in her stomach. Hidden paths? She glanced around. The fog seemed to clear a little more with each step, revealing a wide, open clearing ahead. It felt too easy, too perfect. The ground was soft and carpeted with moss, and the trees on the edges of the clearing seemed to part like old friends welcoming them home. The landscape looked peaceful, serene. But something didn't feel quite right. I don't know, Emma said slowly. It feels too quiet, too calm. Oliver paused, his nose twitching. He sniffed the air cautiously, and his ears flicked forward, alert. You're right. There's something off about this place. It looks welcoming, but it doesn't feel like the right path. Emma nodded, tightening her grip on the lantern. She instinctively took a step back, unsure of what to do next. That's when she noticed it, an odd shimmer in the air ahead, just beyond the clearing. The air itself seemed to ripple, as if something invisible was blocking her view. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but Emma's keen senses caught it. Look, she whispered, pointing toward the shimmer. Oliver's eyes followed her gaze, and his posture became more rigid. There's something there. But it's not what it appears to be. Trust the lantern. Let it show you the true path. Emma held the lantern out in front of her, its glow intensifying as she focused on the shimmering space. She closed her eyes for a moment, listening to the soft hum of the valley. The brook's voice echoed faintly in her mind, reminding her to trust the flow, to trust the magic. As she took a deep breath and stepped forward, the air around her seemed to shift, revealing a hidden path where none had seemed to exist. The clearing she had been looking at disappeared, replaced by a narrow, winding trail that snaked through the trees and underbrush. It was as though the very earth had rearranged itself in response to her call, opening up a secret path that had been there all along. This is it, Emma said, a surge of realization washing over her. This is the path the valley wanted us to find. Oliver gave a small, approving nod. The valley has a way of hiding things from those who aren't ready. But you've come far enough now. You've learned to listen, and now the way forward is revealed. The mist around them seemed to fade further as Emma stepped onto the hidden path. The air felt fresher here, and the trees on either side were older, their bark twisted in ways that spoke of ancient wisdom. The ground was firmer beneath her feet, the earth almost pulsing with life. This path wasn't visible before, Emma said, her voice awestruck. It's like it wasn't meant to be found until now. Exactly, Oliver agreed. Sometimes, the path is hidden because it's not the right time. You've earned the right to walk this road, Emma. The valley has chosen you. As they continued along the path, Emma felt a growing sense of certainty. The mist was now gone entirely, leaving only the moonlight and the soft glow of the lantern to guide them. The trees parted ahead, revealing a small stream that wound through the woods, its waters clear and fast-moving. "This feels different," Emma remarked. "It's like we're entering a new part of the valley. It feels ancient, but alive." "It is," Oliver replied. "This part of the valley holds many secrets, ones that are closely tied to the moonstone. We're getting closer now. The magic is becoming stronger." The air was thicker now, more charged with an energy that hummed in Emma's veins. She could feel the valley's pulse beneath her feet, could almost hear it speaking to her through the rustling of the leaves, the babbling of the stream, the soft sway of the branches overhead. The path curved gently upward, and in the distance, Emma could just make out the silhouette of something looming in the shadows, a stone structure, ancient and covered in vines, standing as if waiting for them. The moonstone, Emma thought. It had to be. The lantern flickered once, its light dimming as they approached, but the glow remained steady, warm. The hidden path had led them here, to this moment. Emma felt her heart race with anticipation. She was close now, closer than ever. And whatever lay ahead, she knew she was ready. The valley was guiding her, and she had come far enough to trust the path it had set before her. With a final deep breath, she stepped forward, the hidden path stretching ahead, leading her toward the stone structure, and perhaps the secret that would restore the valley's magic. The hidden path grew narrower as Emma and Oliver continued forward, the moonlight casting silver patterns across the ground. The trees around them seemed to arch inwards, forming a canopy of leaves that whispered in the breeze, as though sharing secrets only the valley could understand. The air was cooler here, carrying the scent of moss and earth, mingled with a faint sweetness, like the distant fragrance of flowers that bloomed only under the moon's watchful gaze. As they reached the stone structure, Emma paused, her breath catching in her throat. The stones, weathered with age, stood like silent sentinels, draped in thick ivy and moss. The structure was larger than she had imagined, an ancient temple, its walls etched with intricate carvings and symbols, worn smooth by time, but still holding a quiet strength. It was clear this place had once been important, its purpose perhaps lost to history, yet it held an undeniable power now. "Is this it?" Emma whispered, more to herself than to Oliver. Oliver nodded, his eyes reflecting the glow of the lantern in her hand. "This is where the valley's heart lies. The moonstone is close, Emma. Very close." Emma stepped forward, the weight of her mission heavy on her shoulders. Her heart beat faster as she crossed the threshold of the temple, the air within cool and still. The lantern's light flickered slightly, as if in response to the temple's ancient energy. The walls of the temple were lined with carvings that told stories, of stars, of the valley, of people long gone but never forgotten. As Emma's eyes traced the images, she could almost feel their presence, as if the souls of those who had built this place were still watching over it. The path led them further into the heart of the temple, where the ceiling opened up to reveal the night sky. The stars above twinkled brightly, more brilliant than Emma had ever seen. The mist from earlier had long dissipated, and the sky stretched above them in an endless expanse, each star a tiny beacon of light in the vastness of the universe. "There," Emma said, pointing toward the center of the room. In the middle of the temple, on a raised pedestal, sat a stone basin. The basin itself was filled with a soft, silvery light, and at the center of the light lay a single, glowing stone. It was smaller than she had expected, no larger than the palm of her hand, but its radiance was undeniable. The moonstone. Oliver stood at her side, his voice quiet. "It's beautiful. And it's yours, Emma. The valley has chosen you to restore the balance, to bring the magic back." Emma stepped closer, her breath catching in her throat as she approached the pedestal. The moonstone's glow pulsed gently, as though responding to her presence, its light warming her skin. She reached out, her fingers trembling slightly as she touched the cool surface of the stone. The moment her skin made contact, a wave of energy coursed through her, so strong it almost knocked her off her feet. For a brief moment, the world around her blurred, and she saw flashes of images, ancient trees bending under a sky full of stars, rivers flowing with liquid light, and the valley, untouched and full of magic. She saw herself in these images, walking among the people of the valley, sharing in their joy, their peace, and their wisdom. It was as if the moonstone was showing her not just the past, but the potential future, the world that could be restored if the valley's magic was renewed. A soft voice, the voice of the valley itself, filled her mind. "Emma, you are the keeper of the valley's heart now. You hold the light that will restore what was lost, but remember, true magic comes from within, from the dreams you carry. The stars above are your guides, and the dreams below are the seeds of the future." Emma closed her eyes, allowing the words to wash over her. She could feel the weight of the valley's trust, its hope placed in her. The moonstone was not just a key, it was a living, breathing piece of the valley, and she was now a part of it, as much as it was a part of her. "I understand," Emma whispered. She straightened, her heart swelling with a deep sense of purpose. "I will not let you down." The temple seemed to respond, the stone walls glowing faintly with the moonstone's light. The stars above twinkled brighter, and Emma could feel the connection between the earth beneath her feet and the sky above. She was no longer just a traveler passing through. She was now a part of the valley's story, its future intertwined with hers. Oliver's voice broke the silence. "You've done it, Emma. The moonstone is yours. But the journey is far from over. The valley's magic will need to be restored, fully. You must carry it back, to where it belongs." Emma nodded, feeling a mix of determination and awe. She could feel the moonstone's power humming in her hands, ready to be returned to the valley's heart. The path ahead would not be easy, but she was ready. The valley had chosen her, and she would fulfill its dreams. With the moonstone in hand, Emma took a deep breath and turned toward the open sky above, where the stars beckoned, as if guiding her on the next step of her journey. The valley had shown her the way, and now it was her turn to restore the balance, to let the dreams below take root and grow. The valley's heart was in her hands, and with the stars above as her guide, Emma was ready to begin the next chapter of her story. The night had deepened, and the moon above glowed brighter than ever as Emma stood in the center of the temple, the moonstone glowing softly in her hands. The weight of her task hung heavy in the air, the promise of restoring the valley's magic now a tangible reality. But even with the power of the moonstone in her grasp, Emma knew there was more to be done. The valley's healing required more than just the stone. It needed the creatures of the land, the guardians of its secrets, the very beings whose lives were intertwined with the valley's pulse. Oliver, who had been silently observing her, now turned his attention to the growing sounds of movement in the distance. A soft rustle, like leaves swaying in the breeze, but louder, more intentional. There was a shift in the atmosphere, a subtle but undeniable change. The valley seemed to be calling them. "The creatures are coming," Oliver said, his voice filled with reverence. "The guardians of this place. They have sensed the moonstone's return." Emma looked around, feeling the stirrings of something ancient. She hadn't noticed before, but the air in the temple seemed to thrum with life now, as if the valley itself was waking, stretching, preparing to embrace its protectors. From the trees outside the temple came a soft rustling, followed by a slow, deliberate movement. Emma squinted through the open doorway, her breath catching in her throat. Emerging from the shadows of the forest were creatures she had only heard of in stories, beasts of the valley, ancient and wise, their eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. First, a group of wolves padded silently into the clearing, their fur silvery white under the moon's glow. Their eyes, fierce and intelligent, fixed on Emma as they circled the temple in a protective manner, their presence commanding and graceful. These were the moon wolves, guardians of the valley's secrets, creatures that embodied the wild, untamed nature of the land. Behind them, an enormous stag emerged, its antlers glimmering like branches reaching toward the stars. The great creature moved with such majesty that Emma instinctively stepped back, awestruck by its presence. The stag of the northern winds, a creature said to carry the ancient winds of the valley on its back, whose footsteps echoed the rhythm of the earth itself. And then, from the shadows of the trees, came creatures Emma had never expected, large, shadowy figures that seemed to glide rather than walk. The owls of the silent watch, their wings silent as the night, their eyes knowing and ancient. They were the keepers of wisdom, the ones who had seen the valley in all its forms throughout history, from its flourishing to its near ruin. Emma's heart raced as she realized what was happening. The valley had called them all here, to bear witness to the restoration of its heart, the return of its magic. These creatures were its protectors, and now they had gathered to stand with her. Oliver stood at her side, his posture regal and calm. "The creatures of the valley are its guardians, Emma. They watch over this land and ensure that the balance is maintained." With the moonstone's return, they will help you restore the valley, but you must ask them for their aid. They will not offer it freely. They will need to know you are worthy of their trust. Emma nodded, feeling the weight of their gazes upon her. Each creature, whether it was the wolves, the stag, or the owls, was more than just a guardian. They were part of the valley's very soul, woven into the land's magic. She could sense their power, their loyalty, and their deep connection to the valley. It was as if they were extensions of the land itself. Stepping forward, Emma raised the moonstone high, its light growing brighter, filling the temple with a soft, warm glow. She felt the energy of the stone pulsating through her, and she knew this was the moment. She was not alone. The creatures, the valley, the magic, they were all connected, and it was time for her to unite them. With a steady voice, Emma spoke to the gathered creatures, her words carrying the weight of her promise. Guardians of the valley, I stand before you, entrusted with the heart of this land. The moonstone is in my hands, and with it, I vow to restore the balance that has been lost. I ask for your help, for your guidance, to heal what has been broken. I cannot do this alone. Will you stand with me as we restore the magic of this place and protect it for generations to come? There was a long moment of silence as the creatures regarded her, their eyes shining with ancient wisdom. Then, one by one, they began to respond. The moon wolves howled, a long, mournful cry that echoed through the valley. Their voices carried the strength of the wild, a reminder that the land's untamed spirit still lived within them. The great stag bowed its head, the antlers gleaming as it stepped forward. With a soft nicker, it affirmed its willingness to aid Emma, its massive form symbolizing the strength of the valley's heart. The owls of the silent watch raised their wings, their eyes locked onto Emma with an intensity that spoke of timeless knowledge. Their quiet hoot, a soft and gentle sound, seemed to resonate with the rhythm of the valley itself, as if acknowledging the unity between them. Emma's heart swelled with emotion as the creatures offered their allegiance. She could feel the power of the valley coursing through her veins now, flowing through the creatures, the moonstone, the very earth beneath her feet. They had accepted her, trusted her with their most precious gift, the magic of the valley itself. The moonstone in her hands pulsed, its light growing brighter until it illuminated the entire temple, casting shadows that stretched far beyond its walls. The creatures gathered around her, creating a circle of protection, their energy blending with hers. Together, they were one. The valley was alive again. With the creatures at her side, Emma knew that the next step of her journey was beginning. The healing of the valley was in motion, and with its guardians standing by her, she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The magic of the valley was not just in the moonstone, it was in the creatures, in the land, in the very air they breathed. And together, they would restore what had been lost, one step at a time. The valley was quiet, save for the gentle rustle of the trees and the soft murmur of the wind weaving through the leaves. The creatures had gathered around Emma, their forms bathed in the pale light of the moonstone. The air was thick with anticipation, as if the valley itself was holding its breath, waiting for something ancient to awaken. Emma could feel it too, a stirring, deep within the earth, a pull towards something lost, something forgotten. Oliver stood beside her, his gaze steady, his presence reassuring. "The valley has been waiting for this moment," he said softly. "The moonstone's return was just the beginning. Now, you must listen to the valley's echoes, the voices of those who came before us. They hold the key to restoring the magic." Emma nodded, gripping the moonstone tightly. The stone pulsed gently in her hands, sending waves of energy through her body. She closed her eyes, letting the connection deepen, and for a moment, everything else faded away, the creatures, the temple, even Oliver's voice. She was alone in the darkness, the only sound the rhythmic beating of her heart. Then, it began. Whispers, like the softest breath of wind, swirled around her. They were faint at first, like distant voices carried on a breeze. But as Emma focused, the whispers grew clearer, and with them, memories, images of a time long past. She saw herself, standing at the edge of the valley, watching as the first settlers arrived. Their faces were filled with wonder, their eyes wide with the knowledge that they had found something sacred. The valley had called to them, just as it had called to her. The land had been pure then, its magic untamed, its creatures wild and free. But then, the images shifted. A darkness began to creep into the valley, spreading like a shadow across the land. The settlers, once filled with hope, began to lose their way. Their greed, their need for control, began to overpower the valley's natural magic. The moonstone, once a source of peace and unity, was taken, hidden away, its power no longer shared with the land it was meant to protect. The creatures retreated, their magic fading, their connection to the valley weakened. And the valley, in turn, began to wither, losing its vitality. Emma felt a pang of sorrow deep in her chest. The valley had been wounded, not by the natural world, but by those who sought to dominate it. The magic had been corrupted, twisted by the very hands meant to protect it. But then, another image appeared, a figure, standing alone in the moonlight. It was a woman, older than Emma had ever imagined, her eyes filled with wisdom and pain. She wore a cloak of green leaves, her hair long and silver, her hands stretched out toward the moonstone, as though she were trying to summon it back to the valley. The woman's voice, soft and mournful, echoed through Emma's mind. "The valley's heart beats within us all, but it is fragile. Those who seek to control it will destroy it. The moonstone must be protected, and its magic shared. Only then can the balance be restored." The woman's eyes locked with Emma's, and Emma felt a shiver run down her spine. She could see the valley in the woman's eyes, its untamed beauty, its raw magic, its deep sadness. The woman was not just a memory, she was a part of the valley's history, her spirit lingering in the land, watching, waiting for someone to restore what had been lost. Emma blinked, and the vision faded, leaving her standing once more in the temple. The creatures still gathered around her, their eyes filled with a quiet understanding. The whispers had stopped, but the weight of the vision remained, heavy in Emma's chest. She knew now what had happened to the valley. She understood the pain of the land, the deep sorrow that lingered in its heart. Oliver was watching her, his expression somber. "You've seen it, haven't you?" he asked quietly. Emma nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "The valley, it's been hurt. The moonstone was taken, and the creatures, they lost their magic." "Yes," Oliver replied, his voice low. "But that was a long time ago. The valley has waited for this moment, the return of the moonstone and the one who can restore the balance. That person is you, Emma. The valley has chosen you." Emma's heart swelled with a mixture of grief and resolve. She knew what she had to do now. The valley's healing required more than just the return of the moonstone. It required the restoration of trust, the uniting of the creatures, and the rekindling of the valley's magic. She was the key, but the valley itself had to remember how to trust again. "We need to bring the moonstone back to its rightful place," Emma said, her voice steady. "But we also need to heal the land. The creatures, they need to feel the magic again. I have to show them that the valley's heart is strong, and that we can rebuild the connection." Oliver nodded, his eyes reflecting the same resolve. "The creatures will help you. They're already here, and they know the valley is waking again. But you must trust in yourself as much as you trust in them. The healing begins with you." Emma looked at the creatures gathered around her, the moon wolves, the great stag, and the owls of the silent watch. Their eyes were filled with a quiet, ancient understanding. They had waited for this moment, just as she had. The valley had chosen her, and now it was time for her to return the favor. Taking a deep breath, Emma stepped forward, raising the moonstone high once more. The light from the stone began to grow, pulsing with energy, reaching out toward the creatures. The valley's magic stirred, ancient and alive, wrapping around them like a familiar embrace. Emma could feel the magic moving through her, flowing into the land, into the creatures, and into the very heart of the valley. And in that moment, she knew that the healing had begun. The valley had waited for this day, and now it was time for the echoes of the past to fade. The future had arrived, and it was full of promise. The valley's heart was strong again, and with the creatures by her side, Emma was ready to face whatever came next. The night was quiet, save for the soft rustle of leaves and the distant call of the owls. The valley, now infused with the gentle magic of the moonstone, seemed to breathe with a new life. The creatures, once distant and elusive, had gathered around Emma, their presence a comforting reminder that the healing was well underway. Yet, even with the valley beginning to restore itself, Emma knew there was still much to be done. The journey ahead was far from over. As she stood in the center of the temple, the moonstone glowing in her hands, Emma could feel a subtle shift in the air, an energy that pulsed with the same ancient magic that had been dormant for so long. It was as if the valley was calling to her again, urging her to look deeper, to find something that had been hidden for centuries. Oliver, standing beside her, noticed the change too. His eyes narrowed, his brow furrowed. "Something's different," he murmured. "The valley's magic is shifting again. It's as if there's more for you to discover, something important that's been waiting for you." Emma nodded slowly. She felt it too, a pull, like an invisible thread tugging at her heart, leading her towards something unknown but familiar. The moonstone in her hand seemed to hum with anticipation, and she instinctively began to walk toward the edge of the temple, where the light from the stone illuminated a narrow path leading deeper into the forest. The creatures, sensing her intent, began to move with her, their silent presence a steady companion. The moon wolves, their fur shimmering in the soft light, led the way, their keen eyes scanning the path ahead. The great stag followed closely behind, its antlers glinting like silver branches in the moonlight, and the owls of the silent watch glided overhead, their wings silent and graceful. As Emma ventured deeper into the forest, the sounds of the valley seemed to grow quieter, the air thick with an expectant stillness. The path before her twisted and turned, winding through the ancient trees, until they reached a small clearing. In the center of the clearing stood a massive tree, its trunk wide and gnarled, its roots stretching deep into the earth. Its branches were laden with golden leaves, and the soft glow of the moonstone seemed to reach out to them, as if recognizing something sacred. Emma approached the tree, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the power of the tree, its ancient magic pulsing in the air. It was a place of deep significance, a place where the valley's past and present met, where the old magic still lingered. At the base of the tree, half hidden in the shadows, something caught her eye, a single feather, shimmering with a soft, golden light. It lay gently against the ground, as if waiting for her to discover it. She knelt down slowly, her fingers trembling as she reached for it. The moment her fingers touched the feather, a surge of energy shot through her, and for a brief moment, Emma was flooded with images, visions of the valley's history, of creatures long forgotten, of battles fought and lost. The valley's magic, ancient and powerful, flowed through her like a river, each memory a thread that wove the tapestry of the land's past. She saw a figure, cloaked in golden light, standing beside the great tree. It was a bird, no, a creature, one with the wings of an eagle and the body of a lion. Its eyes glowed with a fierce, unyielding wisdom, and its feathers shimmered with gold, like sunlight on the water. This was the guardian of the valley, the protector of its ancient magic, and the bearer of the valley's deepest secrets. The bird spoke to her, its voice both distant and near, as if echoing through the very heart of the land. The valley's heart beats with the balance of life and death, of light and shadow. The moonstone is but one part of the whole. To restore the valley, you must seek the golden feather, the symbol of true harmony. Only then can the magic of the land be fully awakened. The vision faded, and Emma was left holding the feather in her hand, its golden hue still glowing softly in the moonlight. The valley's magic was ancient, but it was not complete. The moonstone was only the first piece of the puzzle, and the golden feather was the key to unlocking the true power of the land. As she stood up, the creatures around her watched with rapt attention. The moon wolves, the great stag, and the owls of the silent watch all seemed to sense the significance of what she had found. Emma could feel the weight of the feather in her hand, and she knew that the journey ahead would not be easy. The valley was still fragile, its magic incomplete. But with the golden feather in her grasp, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. Oliver stepped forward, his eyes bright with recognition. "The golden feather," he said softly, his voice filled with awe. "It's said to be the essence of the valley's balance, light and dark, life and death. The guardian of this land, the one who keeps the harmony intact, has left this behind. This is the key to restoring the valley completely." Emma nodded, a sense of determination settling over her. She knew what had to be done now. The valley had given her the moonstone and the golden feather, 2 pieces of its heart. But they were not enough on their own. She had to return the feather to the guardian tree, to awaken the final part of the valley's magic and complete the restoration. With a deep breath, Emma turned to the creatures gathered around her. "We need to return this to where it belongs," she said, holding the feather up to the moonlight. "The valley's magic is not complete without the golden feather. We can't heal the land fully until its true balance is restored." The creatures, understanding the gravity of the task before them, nodded in silent agreement. Together, they began their journey back to the heart of the valley, where the great tree stood, where the final piece of the valley's magic awaited. As Emma walked, the golden feather in her hand glowing with a soft light, she felt the land beneath her feet stir with life. The valley was waking, slowly but surely. The magic was returning, and with it, hope for the future. She didn't know what lay ahead, but she knew one thing for certain: she wasn't alone. The valley, its creatures, and its magic were with her every step of the way. And together, they would restore the valley to its true, vibrant self. The air was thick with the scent of moss and earth as Emma, the creatures, and Oliver made their way deeper into the valley. The moonlight shone through the canopy above, casting long shadows that danced and flickered in the quiet night. With the golden feather in Emma's hands, their journey had taken on a new urgency. The valley was alive with magic once more, but it was clear that the final steps of their quest would not be easy. The path ahead twisted and turned, leading them toward a dense thicket of ivy-covered trees. The ivy was thick, winding around the trunks like ancient serpents, their tendrils thick and tangled. A soft, eerie glow seemed to emanate from the ivy itself, almost as if it were alive, watching them, waiting. "This is the maze of ivy," Oliver said quietly, his voice carrying a note of caution. "It's an ancient place in the valley, one that was created long ago to protect the heart of the land. Only those with pure intentions can pass through it. The ivy is said to test those who enter, to challenge their resolve and their strength of spirit. Emma glanced at the maze ahead, the dense curtain of ivy seeming to stretch endlessly into the darkness. The task ahead was clear. They needed to navigate the maze, find the heart of the valley, and place the golden feather at the foot of the great guardian tree. But Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something else awaited them, something more than just a physical challenge. The moon wolves, their eyes glowing softly in the dim light, led the way, their keen senses guiding them through the thick underbrush. The great stag followed closely behind, its antlers brushing against the ivy as it moved with grace and ease. The owls of the silent watch flitted overhead, their wings silent against the night air. But despite the creature's natural abilities, the maze was not an easy one to navigate. The ivy seemed to shift and change as they moved through it, creating new pathways while blocking old ones. Emma could feel the magic of the valley surrounding them, but it was a disorienting magic, one that played with her senses, making it difficult to know which way was the right path. At times, the path ahead seemed to disappear entirely, swallowed up by the thick tangle of ivy. Other times, the vines would curl around them, like long fingers reaching out to hold them back. Emma's heart raced as she pushed forward, the golden feather in her hand pulsing with an energy that matched her growing determination. "We must stay focused," Emma said, trying to calm her mind. "We're close. I can feel it." Oliver nodded, his gaze steady. "You're right. The heart of the valley is just ahead. The maze is a trial, but it will not stop us. We've come this far, and we will finish this together." The deeper they ventured into the maze, the more Emma felt the weight of the task ahead. She had been chosen to restore the valley's magic, but what would that truly mean? Could she restore the balance between light and dark, life and death, as the golden feather had promised? Or would the valley remain broken, its magic forever lost? The path ahead grew darker, the ivy thickening as they pressed forward. The creatures seemed to sense the change, their movements becoming more cautious, their heads turning constantly, ears and eyes alert for any sign of danger. The air grew heavy, as if the very earth itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Suddenly, the path before them split into two, both directions leading deeper into the maze. To the left, the ivy parted slightly, revealing a faint trail that seemed to shimmer with a faint golden light. To the right, the ivy was thick, nearly impassable, but the air around it felt charged with an electric tension, as if the path held some unseen force. Oliver stopped, his expression conflicted. "Both paths lead forward," he said, "but which one is the right choice?" "The left path seems to be calling to the feather, but the right feels different, like something ancient is waiting for us there." Emma's fingers tightened around the golden feather, and she felt a strange pull toward the left path, the faint glow beckoning her forward. Yet, the right path whispered to her as well, its silent promise lingering in the air. "Let the valley guide us," she said, taking a step toward the left path. "I feel the feather is drawn this way." The moon wolves nodded, their glowing eyes watching Emma closely as they followed her lead. The great stag moved silently beside them, its gaze focused on the path ahead. The elves, perched on the thick vines above, remained motionless, their eyes fixed on the maze around them. As Emma stepped onto the left path, the air around them shifted, the glow of the ivy intensifying as they moved forward. The vines seemed to part in front of her, as if the maze itself were clearing the way. The deeper they went, the more the air felt alive, the magic in the valley growing stronger with each step. But then, just as they were nearing what seemed to be the heart of the maze, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. A low rumble echoed through the earth, and Emma's heart skipped a beat. The walls of ivy seemed to grow taller, thicker, and the path ahead began to narrow. "This isn't right," Emma muttered, her hand clutching the golden feather tightly. "It's like the maze is alive, like it's fighting us." Oliver stepped forward, his brow furrowed. "The maze is meant to test us, but it's also meant to protect the heart of the valley. We must be cautious. The magic here is powerful, and it can be both a guide and a barrier." Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the maze, swirling the ivy around them, and Emma felt a strange pull toward a new direction. The wind seemed to carry a whisper, a voice she couldn't quite understand, but one that felt oddly familiar. It was as though the valley itself was speaking to her, urging her to trust her instincts and follow where the wind led. "Follow the wind," Emma whispered, her voice firm with resolve. "It's guiding us." And with that, the creatures moved forward, their pace quickening as they followed the path dictated by the wind. The air grew colder, the ivy twisting around them in a protective embrace, and Emma knew they were close. The heart of the valley was within reach. But as they approached the clearing ahead, she realized that the maze had only been the beginning. The true test was yet to come. With the golden feather still glowing softly in her hand, Emma stepped forward, ready to face whatever awaited them next. The air grew colder as Emma, Oliver, and the creatures emerged from the maze of ivy, stepping into a small, hidden clearing. The dense, twisting vines behind them seemed to close in, as if protecting the entrance to this sacred place. The wind had calmed, but the quiet that surrounded them now was deep, almost oppressive, filled with an unspoken weight. The only sound was the soft crunch of leaves underfoot as the group made their way forward. At the center of the clearing stood an ancient tree, unlike any Emma had seen before. Its trunk was wide and gnarled, its bark smooth yet weathered, as though it had stood for countless centuries. Its branches stretched toward the sky, twisting in elegant, spiraling arcs that seemed to dance with the moonlight. But it was not the tree's size or its shape that captivated Emma, it was the subtle, almost imperceptible glow that emanated from within the trunk, casting a soft light around the clearing. There was something undeniably magical about it, something old and wise. "This is it," Emma whispered, feeling a strange, deep pull in her chest. "This is the heart of the valley." The creatures slowed their pace, their eyes wide with reverence. The moon wolves padded softly forward, their fur rippling in the soft light. The great stag lowered its head, its antlers brushing the ground as though in deep respect. The owls perched silently on nearby branches, their eyes fixed on the tree, waiting. Oliver, too, felt the weight of the moment. This tree, it feels different from the others, doesn't it? It's alive in a way that no other tree is. Like it holds the valley's memories. Emma nodded, her fingers still gripping the golden feather. It's more than just alive, she murmured. It knows something. It holds the secrets of the valley's past. As she stepped closer, a soft voice echoed in her mind, a voice that seemed to resonate from deep within the tree itself. You've come to seek what has been forgotten, what the valley has long hidden. But the truth comes at a price, child. Are you ready to hear what the tree knows? Emma hesitated. She wasn't sure what the tree meant by the truth or what the price would be. But in her heart, she knew there was no turning back. The valley had chosen her, and with the golden feather, she had already taken the first step toward restoring its balance. Now, it was time to face the past. I'm ready, Emma said softly, her voice steady despite the uncertainty swirling in her chest. Tell me what you know. The tree's branches seemed to stir, even though no wind blew. The glow from within the trunk brightened slightly, and the air grew warmer, thick with a magical energy. The voice, now clear and full of wisdom, filled Emma's mind once more. Long ago, this valley was a land of harmony where light and darkness existed side by side. But the balance was shattered by greed and fear. The creatures of the valley, the guardians of its magic, were driven into hiding, and the ancient powers were sealed away. The moonstone was hidden, and the golden feather, the symbol of true harmony, was lost. You, child, are the one who has come to restore what was broken. Emma's heart raced as the tree's words echoed in her mind. She could feel the weight of the history it spoke of, the deep scars that had been left on the land. But what did it mean by the price? What had to be sacrificed in order to restore the valley? To heal the valley, the tree continued, you must face the darkness that still lingers within it. The valley's heart is not simply in its creatures or its magic, but in its memories. You must confront the mistakes of the past, the regrets that still haunt this land. Only then can the balance be truly restored. The golden feather in Emma's hand pulsed with a strange energy, and she felt the weight of its importance. It was more than just a symbol, it was a key. The valley's magic, its memories, and its balance all hinged on the feather's power. But to unlock it, Emma had to confront something deeply painful, something hidden in the valley's past. I don't understand, Emma whispered, feeling a knot form in her stomach. What do you mean by the darkness? What do I have to face? The tree's glow flickered slightly, as if the answer were reluctant to come. The darkness is not always what it seems. It is not a monster, not a beast that can be slain. It is the grief and sorrow of those who have gone before. It is the betrayal of the valley's guardians, the choices made in fear. It is the unhealed wounds that have shaped the land into what it is now. Emma felt the air grow heavier, and she knew the tree was speaking of something more than just the physical world. This was something deeper, something that had to do with the very soul of the valley. "The price you must pay is the truth of your own heart," the tree whispered. "You must accept what is hidden within you, what has been buried for so long. Only then can you unlock the power to restore the valley." Emma's breath caught in her throat. The price was her own heart, her own secrets. She had come seeking to heal the land, but in doing so, she was being asked to confront her own pain, her own hidden fears. Suddenly, the golden feather in her hand grew warmer, and Emma felt an overwhelming wave of emotion, memories she had long buried, fears she had tried to ignore, and regrets she had never spoken. It was as though the tree had opened a door into her soul, and now she had to face everything she had kept hidden. Oliver stepped forward, his voice breaking through the flood of emotions. "Emma, you don't have to do this alone. We're with you, all of us." The creatures gathered around her, quiet, steadfast, a reminder that she was not alone. The moon wolves stood guard, their eyes fierce with loyalty. The great stag lowered its head, as if offering its strength. The elves, silent but watchful, perched above, their eyes full of wisdom and understanding. Emma took a deep breath, steadying herself. She could feel the weight of the valley's past, but she knew she had to face it, for the land and for herself. The golden feather was her guide, but it was her heart that would unlock the final step toward restoring the valley. "I'm ready," she whispered, her voice stronger now. "I will face whatever it takes." The tree's glow brightened once more, and the air seemed to hum with energy. "Then step forward, child," the tree said. "The truth is waiting." With a final, deep breath, Emma stepped toward the tree, the golden feather held firmly in her hand. The path to healing was not just about restoring the valley, it was about restoring herself, facing the darkness that had shaped her journey, and accepting the truth that lay hidden within her heart. And as she reached out to touch the tree's ancient bark, she felt the valley's magic surge once more, its heart beating in rhythm with her own. The final piece of the puzzle was within reach. The journey to restore the balance had only just begun. The moment Emma's fingers brushed the ancient bark of the tree, the world around her seemed to shift. A warm, soft light enveloped her, a light so bright it felt as though the stars themselves were pouring down upon her. For a brief moment, Emma felt weightless, as though she was suspended between time and space, caught in the delicate balance of the valley's magic. The golden feather in her hand pulsed with energy, its glow harmonizing with the radiance of the tree. She closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the sensations, and for a moment everything was still. The whisper of the tree's voice faded into a gentle hum, its presence now a part of her. It was as if the valley itself was breathing, its ancient rhythm resonating deep within her. She felt a deep sense of peace, but also a profound responsibility. Her journey had taken her further than she could have imagined, and yet, it was far from over. When Emma opened her eyes, the clearing had changed. The tree was still there, towering and majestic, but now the ground beneath her was soft with moss, and the night sky above was clearer, more luminous. The stars twinkled like diamonds scattered across a velvet sky. But what caught her attention most was the lake that had appeared before her, shimmering in the moonlight, its surface calm and serene. The moonlit lake. It was a place spoken of in whispers among the valley's creatures, a sacred location that few had ever seen. It was said to be a mirror of the valley's soul, a place where time could bend and truths could be revealed. No one knew exactly where it was, but the legends claimed that those who were worthy could find it when the time was right. And now, Emma had stumbled upon it. She took a tentative step toward the lake, the creatures following her closely, their eyes filled with curiosity. The moon wolves padded softly behind her, their fur glistening under the moonlight. The great stag walked beside her, its steps graceful and sure, while the owls circled above, their wings silent in the cool night air. The lake's surface was perfectly still, its waters reflecting the full moon above in a mirror-like surface. The trees around it stood in silent witness, their branches hanging low, as though they, too, had been waiting for this moment. Emma stood at the edge of the water, mesmerized by the beauty before her. "What is this place?" she whispered, the words escaping her lips without thought. She felt both awed and humbled by the lake's serene presence. Oliver, standing beside her, looked toward the water with a deep sense of understanding. This is where the valley's memories live. The moonlit lake is a place of reflection, not just for the land, but for those who seek its healing. It is said that the lake can show you what has been hidden, what has been lost. Sometimes it reveals the truth we are not ready to face. Emma felt a chill run down her spine. The lake held something more than just beauty, it was a mirror to her soul, a place where the hidden parts of herself, the parts she had long avoided, could no longer be ignored. The water rippled gently, as if the lake itself had heard Oliver's words. Slowly, Emma knelt down beside the shore, her fingers skimming the surface of the water. As soon as her fingertips touched the cool surface, a series of images flickered within the lake, moving like reflections in the depths. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She saw herself, but not as she was now. In the water, she saw her younger self, standing alone in a distant forest, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. There were flashes of moments from her childhood, her mother's comforting voice, the warmth of a home she had lost, the heavy silence of a life that had changed too suddenly. The lake showed her the loss of her parents, the long nights spent wandering the world in search of answers. She saw herself, lost in grief, as though she had been seeking something she couldn't quite name, something that had eluded her for years. Then the reflection shifted, showing her standing in the clearing, the golden feather clutched in her hand, surrounded by the creatures of the valley. She saw the weight of responsibility on her shoulders, the quiet fear that she was not enough, that she might fail the valley, fail the creatures who depended on her. The lake did not show her a future. it only revealed the truth of her heart. It laid bare her doubts, her fears, and her regrets, the things she had hidden even from herself. But in that reflection, there was also a flicker of something else, something powerful. The golden feather in her hand shone brighter, and she saw, for the first time, the path ahead of her, not as a burden, but as a calling. The valley had chosen her, not for what she lacked, but for the strength she had yet to discover. The reflection in the water began to shift again, this time showing the creatures of the valley, each one part of a greater whole, each one connected to her in ways she hadn't fully understood. The moon wolves, the great stag, the owls, each of them had a purpose, a role to play in the restoration of the valley. And she was their guide, their protector, their beacon of hope. She had a place in this world, and the valley needed her as much as she needed it. Oliver stepped forward, his voice soft and reassuring. The lake does not show you what you want to see, Emma. It shows you what you need to understand. This is not just about restoring the valley's magic. It's about understanding the balance within yourself, embracing both the light and the darkness. Emma's gaze remained fixed on the water, her heart beating steady as she absorbed the truth the lake had shown her. She had come to the valley seeking answers, but what the lake revealed was not an answer, it was a choice. A choice to face the darkness within herself and embrace the strength she had yet to tap into. The moon above shone brighter now, casting a soft, silver glow across the lake. The creatures of the valley stood in quiet reverence, their eyes fixed on Emma. The next steps were clear. They would continue their journey, together, toward the heart of the valley's healing. But Emma knew that the true magic, the true restoration, would come not from the valley alone, but from within her own heart. She rose to her feet, her gaze steady, her resolve clear. "I'm ready," she whispered, feeling the weight of the feather in her hand, the pull of the valley's magic guiding her forward. With a final glance at the moonlit lake, Emma turned toward the path that would take her deeper into the valley, her journey toward healing just beginning. And though the road ahead was uncertain, she knew now that she was no longer alone. The valley, the creatures, and the magic of the land were all part of her story, and together, they would restore the balance that had been lost. The soft glow of the moonlit lake faded behind them as Emma, Oliver, and their loyal companions pressed deeper into the valley. The air had a crispness to it now, as if the very night itself had been touched by magic. The valley was alive, its heartbeat pulsing with an energy Emma could feel in every step she took. The golden feather was warm in her hand, its glow faint but constant, a reminder of the responsibility that lay before her. As they continued their journey, the landscape began to change. The dense trees and winding paths gave way to an open clearing, where the moonlight bathed the land in silver. At the far side of the clearing, a lone tree stood, its branches swaying gently in the breeze. Unlike the towering oak in the center of the valley or the strong pines that lined the forest, this tree was delicate and graceful, its long, drooping branches whispering softly in the night air. "It's the Whispering Willow," Oliver murmured, his voice filled with a reverence that matched the stillness of the night. They say it's the heart of the valley's spirit, the tree that holds the wisdom of the land. But it only reveals its secrets to those who truly listen. Emma felt a pull in her chest, the same pull she had felt when she first touched the golden feather. It was as if the willow were calling to her, urging her to approach. Her feet moved on their own, and before she knew it, she was standing at the edge of the tree's shadow, gazing up at its branches as they swayed in rhythm with the wind. The Whispering Willow was a sight to behold. Its bark was pale and smooth, almost silver in the moonlight, and its long, slender leaves shimmered as they caught the light, casting soft, dancing shadows across the ground. The tree seemed to hum with a quiet energy, the air around it filled with the sound of 1,000 whispers, soft, melodic, almost like a lullaby. "This tree," Emma whispered, "it feels alive, but not like the others. It's as if it's listening, waiting for something." Oliver nodded, his expression thoughtful. The Whispering Willow is different from all the other trees. It doesn't speak with words, but with the wind, the leaves, and the silence. It holds the memories of the valley, its past, its secrets. But to hear its song, you must be patient, and you must be willing to listen. The creatures gathered around the tree, their eyes fixed on the willow, waiting for something to happen. The moon wolves circled the tree, their steps light and cautious, while the great stag stood at the far edge of the clearing, its antlers catching the light of the moon. The owls flew in silent arcs above, their wings cutting through the air like whispers themselves. Emma took a deep breath, her heart steadying as she knelt at the base of the willow. She closed her eyes, focusing on the rhythmic rustling of its leaves, the soft murmur of the wind, and the faint glow of the golden feather in her hand. She could feel the presence of the tree, the pull of its ancient wisdom, and it filled her with a sense of calm, even as her mind buzzed with questions. For a long moment, the valley was still, the only sound the soft whisper of the willow's leaves. Emma felt as though time had slowed, the world around her growing distant. She could feel the weight of her journey, the path ahead, and the immense responsibility of restoring the balance to the valley. But in this moment, there was peace. And then, without warning, the air shifted. The whispers of the willow grew louder, though still indistinct, like voices carried on the wind. The tree's branches swayed more violently, as if they were dancing to a rhythm only they could hear. The leaves shimmered, their glow brightening, and the wind picked up, swirling around Emma in a soft but insistent breeze. She opened her eyes just in time to see the tree's branches bending low toward her, as if reaching out to touch her. The whispers grew clearer now, no longer a murmur, but a distinct melody, each note carrying a sense of longing, of history, and of pain. Emma felt a chill run down her spine, but she did not pull away. The song of the willow called to something deep within her, a connection she could not ignore. The whispers became words, soft, haunting, and full of sorrow. Emma. Her name echoed in the night air, and she felt a shiver of recognition. The voice was not one she had ever heard, but it was familiar in a way that unsettled her. The tree spoke to her as if it had known her all along. You have come far, child. But the valley's heart is not just in the land. It is in the stories we carry, the memories we hold, and the burdens we bear. You are not the first to seek the valley's healing, but you are the one who will finish what was begun. Emma's breath caught in her throat. What did the willow mean? Who had come before her, and what had they started? The branches of the willow seemed to sway in a pattern, and the whispers picked up again, the song becoming a narrative, as though the tree were recounting a forgotten story. Long ago, before the shadows crept over the land, there was another, a guardian, like you. They came to the valley seeking to heal the broken magic, to restore the balance that had been lost. But the darkness was too great, and the heart of the valley was hidden away. The guardian left, never to return, leaving behind only a legacy of hope and a memory of what could have been. Emma felt a pang of sadness at the story, the weight of the words settling heavy in her chest. She had come to restore the valley, to heal its broken magic, but now she realized that she was not the first. There had been others who had tried and failed before her. The valley had witnessed countless attempts at restoration, and each had ended in disappointment. But she could not let that stop her. The willow's song spoke of a legacy, a thread of hope woven through the valley's history. And now it was her turn to carry that thread. The tree's song softened, its final notes a gentle whisper. Remember, child, it is not just strength that will restore the valley. It is love, and patience, and understanding. The land will heal when you learn to listen, when you hear the stories carried in the wind and the whispers of the past. Only then will you find the path forward. As the last note faded into the night, the branches of the willow settled, and the wind calmed. The clearing was silent once more, but Emma felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. She stood slowly, the golden feather still glowing gently in her hand, its warmth a comfort in her palm. Oliver stepped closer, his eyes soft with understanding. The willow has spoken, Emma. It has shown you the way forward. Emma nodded, feeling the weight of the tree's words in her heart. The valley's healing was not just about restoring the land, it was about listening, about understanding the past, and embracing the stories that had been forgotten. The Whispering Willow had shared its wisdom, and now Emma knew what she must do. The journey ahead would not be easy, but Emma was no longer afraid. She had the strength of the valley's creatures by her side, and the knowledge of the past to guide her. Together, they would restore the balance. And with that, she turned away from the Whispering Willow, ready to face whatever came next. The valley's heart was calling, and Emma was ready to answer. As Emma stood at the edge of the clearing, the soft glow of the Whispering Willow fading into the night, the valley seemed to hold its breath. The journey had already taken her so far, and yet she knew she was still only on the cusp of what was to come. The air felt heavy with anticipation, as if the very land was awaiting her next step. The words of the willow echoed in her mind, and the weight of them pressed against her heart. It is not just strength that will restore the valley. It is love, and patience, and understanding. What did the willow mean by that? How could she combine these intangible things with the immense responsibility she carried? Emma knew the answer was hidden somewhere within the valley itself. She just had to keep moving forward, keep listening, keep seeking. "Are you ready?" Oliver's voice broke through her thoughts, and she turned to find him standing beside her, his expression calm but expectant. The creatures of the valley had gathered around, their eyes soft with understanding. They were ready to follow her, to help her discover the next piece of the puzzle. "I don't know if I'm ready," Emma admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "But I will be. I have to be." Oliver smiled gently. "You are more ready than you think. The valley has chosen you, Emma. And you have already proven that you are strong enough to carry its heart." She nodded, though her heart still fluttered with doubt. They had been through so much already, the moonlit lake, the whispering willow, and yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest part of the journey still lay ahead. The valley had hidden its deepest secrets, and she was determined to find them. But what was the key? What was the one thing that would unlock the magic that had been lost? Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden rustling in the bushes nearby. A small, glowing figure appeared in the shadows, the firefly, as they had come to call it. The tiny creature hovered in the air, its wings flickering with light as it zipped playfully around Emma's head before landing softly on her shoulder. "The firefly again?" Emma smiled as it settled, its soft glow casting a warm light in the darkness. She had come to see the firefly as a guide, a messenger of sorts, always appearing when she needed it most. The firefly buzzed excitedly in her ear, and Emma couldn't help but laugh. It seemed to be trying to communicate something, its tiny body flickering with urgency. She looked at Oliver, who nodded as though he understood. "It's trying to show you something," he said softly, his voice full of wisdom. "Follow it." Without waiting for another word, the firefly zipped off, its glowing body leading the way into the depths of the forest. Emma hesitated only for a moment before following, her heart beating faster with curiosity. The creatures of the valley followed closely behind, their steps light but purposeful. The path through the forest was different now, darker, more tangled, as though the land itself were drawing them deeper into its heart. The trees seemed to close in around them, their branches twisting and stretching above, blocking out the moonlight. But the firefly's glow illuminated the way, and Emma felt a strange sense of calm in its light, a feeling that the valley itself was guiding her. After what felt like hours of winding through the dense undergrowth, the firefly led them to a clearing where a large stone structure stood, a doorway of sorts, set into the side of a hill. The stones were ancient, weathered by time, but they were unmistakably crafted, arranged in a deliberate pattern. Emma felt a jolt of recognition. She had seen something like this before. The stonework, the intricate carvings, it was the same as the symbols she had seen in the golden feather, the same patterns that had appeared in the moonlit lake. This was no ordinary stone structure. It was the key, the missing piece of the puzzle. The key to the valley, Oliver murmured, his voice filled with awe. This is where it all begins. The firefly hovered around the entrance, its light flickering as if urging Emma to approach. As she stepped closer, the stone door seemed to respond to her presence, a low rumble vibrating through the ground. The carvings on the door shifted, rearranging themselves like puzzle pieces, revealing an intricate pattern that matched the markings on the golden feather. Emma's heart raced as she reached out to touch the door. The moment her fingers brushed against the stone, a soft pulse of energy surged through her. It was as if the door recognized her, as if it had been waiting for her all along. The key, Emma whispered, feeling the truth settle in her chest. The golden feather is the key. It unlocks this place. She stepped back slightly, taking a deep breath. Oliver nodded, stepping forward with a quiet reverence. You have it, Emma. The golden feather is the key to the valley's heart. Place it where it belongs. Emma looked down at the feather in her hand. Its glow seemed to intensify in her palm, its light swirling in patterns that matched the carvings on the door. She raised her hand, steadying herself, and with a deep breath, she pressed the feather into the stone. The moment she did, the entire valley seemed to respond. The ground beneath her feet hummed with energy, and the air around them shimmered with magic. The stone door groaned and shifted, slowly beginning to open, revealing the dark interior beyond. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of earth and age, but Emma could also sense something else, a quiet power, ancient and still. The valley's heart, she realized. This was where it all began, where the magic had been hidden away, waiting for the one who could unlock it. The creatures of the valley stood close, their eyes filled with wonder and anticipation. The firefly hovered at the entrance, its light casting strange shadows on the walls of the stone chamber. The owl perched high on a nearby rock, watching intently, while the moon wolves circled the clearing, their eyes glowing in the dark. Are you ready? Oliver asked, his voice low but steady. The key has opened the door. What lies inside is the next step in your journey. Emma took one final breath, her hand still resting on the golden feather. I'm ready, she said, her voice strong with newfound determination. Let's see what the valley has been hiding. With that, Emma stepped forward, crossing the threshold into the heart of the valley, where the answers to the land's magic and her destiny awaited her. As Emma stepped through the threshold of the ancient stone chamber, a wave of energy washed over her, pulling her deeper into the heart of the valley. The air inside was cool, it sent a mixture of earth, moss, and something older, like the very spirit of the land itself. The soft glow of the golden feather illuminated the cavernous space, casting long shadows that danced like the fleeting whispers of forgotten stories. Her companions, Oliver, the creatures of the valley, and the firefly, followed her inside, their presence both reassuring and humbling. The stone walls were lined with ancient carvings, symbols, and runes etched into the surface, their meanings lost to time but their beauty undeniable. Some of the carvings seemed to shift as she moved, as if alive, reacting to her presence. At the far end of the chamber, a pool of still water lay, reflecting the faint light of the golden feather. It was impossibly clear, the water so pure that it seemed to glow from within. There, in the center of the pool, stood a stone pedestal, upon which rested a shimmering crystal, its facets catching the light and scattering it across the walls in 1,000 different directions. This, Emma knew, was the heart of the valley, the source of its magic, its life, its very essence. The golden feather pulsed in her hand, its light growing brighter, its warmth intensifying as if in response to the crystal. Emma felt a deep connection, a bond that transcended time and space. The feather was not just a key, it was a part of this valley, a vessel that carried its spirit, its history, and its future. "This is it," Oliver said softly, his voice filled with reverence. "This is what you've come for, Emma. The heart of the valley, the source of all its magic. It has waited for you." Emma nodded, her breath steady but her heart pounding in her chest. She had been chosen for this moment, but now she understood the true weight of her journey. The valley had suffered, its magic fractured by time, hidden away from the world. And now, it was her responsibility to restore that balance, to heal the wounds that had been left behind. She stepped forward, her feet barely making a sound on the smooth stone floor. The water in the pool rippled as she approached, the reflection of the crystal shivering slightly in response. She could feel the magic in the air, thick and palpable, swirling around her like a living thing. The firefly hovered beside her, its soft glow flickering as it danced around the pool. For a moment, it seemed to be speaking, its tiny body shimmering with urgency, as though urging her to act. Emma took a deep breath and knelt by the edge of the water, her fingers hovering just above the surface. The crystal beckoned to her, its beauty both mesmerizing and overwhelming. She reached out, her hand trembling slightly, and touched the cool surface of the water. As soon as her fingers made contact, a pulse of energy shot through her, stronger than anything she had felt before. It was as if the very essence of the valley had recognized her, as if the land itself were alive, responding to her touch. The crystal in the center of the pool began to glow brighter, its light radiating outward, filling the chamber with an ethereal brilliance. The walls seemed to vibrate with energy, the carvings shifting and moving as though coming to life, telling the ancient stories of the valley once more. The air was thick with magic, a hum that resonated in Emma's chest, in her very soul. And then, it happened. A rush of wind filled the chamber, and the surface of the pool began to churn. The water swirled and spiraled, forming shapes and symbols, creating patterns that Emma could almost understand, but not quite. She watched in awe as the water seemed to reflect the past and the future, the memories of the valley's ancient past merging with the possibilities of what was yet to come. The golden feather pulsed in her hand, and she understood. The feather was the bridge between the past and the future, between the broken magic of the valley and the restoration that could come only with time, patience, and understanding. It was not just a key, it was a symbol, a reminder of the balance that had once existed in the valley, a balance that could only be restored by healing the land and its people. Emma closed her eyes, focusing on the feeling of the magic swirling around her, the pulse of the feather in her hand, the rhythm of the valley's heartbeat in her chest. She let go of her doubts, her fears, and allowed herself to be fully present in this moment. She was no longer just a traveler, a seeker of answers. She was part of the valley now, its spirit intertwined with her own. As if sensing her resolve, the crystal in the pool began to lift, floating gently into the air. The light it emitted grew even brighter, filling the entire chamber with a soft, golden glow. The carvings on the walls of the chamber shifted and rearranged themselves, forming new patterns, new symbols that spoke of hope and renewal. Emma stood, her hands held out before her, as the crystal floated toward her. She felt a deep sense of peace settle over her, the weight of her journey giving way to a sense of completion, of coming full circle. She knew what she had to do. The valley's magic, the essence of its heart, was within her reach. And with it, she could restore balance to the land, heal its wounds, and bring forth a new dawn for the valley. The crystal hovered just above her hands, its light bathing her in warmth. Emma reached out, her fingers brushing its smooth surface, and as she did, a wave of energy surged through her, filling her with an overwhelming sense of connection. She felt the valley's history, its struggles, its triumphs, and its sorrow all at once. It was a feeling both humbling and empowering, as though she were carrying the weight of the entire land within her. And then, the crystal shattered. It was not a violent break, but a soft, almost tender fracture, as if the crystal had been waiting for this moment, for the return of the valley's magic. The pieces of the crystal scattered, dissolving into the air like stardust, their light mingling with the soft glow of the golden feather. A great stillness fell over the chamber, and for a moment Emma felt as though the world had paused, holding its breath. She looked around, and for the first time since her arrival, she felt truly at peace. The valley's heart had been restored. The magic was whole again. The wind outside began to shift, carrying the promise of change. It was the return of dawn, not just for the valley, but for the world beyond. The sun would rise once more, bringing light to a land that had long been shrouded in shadow. The valley's future was no longer uncertain, it was bright, filled with endless possibilities. Emma closed her eyes and whispered a quiet prayer of thanks. The valley had healed, and in doing so, so had she. The journey had come full circle, and now it was time to move forward, to embrace the new dawn that awaited. And with that, she stepped back into the light, ready to face the world once more, carrying with her the wisdom, the magic, and the love of the valley that had chosen her. The light of the newly risen sun filtered through the thick canopy of trees as Emma stepped out of the stone chamber. The valley, once shrouded in mystery and darkness, was now alive with the gentle hum of restored magic. The air felt fresh, vibrant, and full of life, as if the land itself had taken a deep breath and was awakening anew. The flowers bloomed brighter, the trees stood taller, and the rivers flowed clearer. The valley was whole again, its balance restored, its spirit renewed. Emma took a deep, contented breath, feeling the cool morning air fill her lungs. The weight of her journey, the uncertainty, the trials she had faced, all seemed to melt away in the warm embrace of the valley's transformation. She had done it. She had restored the magic, brought the valley back to life, and in doing so, had found peace within herself. The firefly flitted about her, its tiny light flashing playfully as if to say, "It's time." Emma smiled, her heart light. She glanced over her shoulder, where Oliver and the others stood, watching her with quiet pride and gratitude. The creatures of the valley, each one unique, each one now vital to the harmony of the land, had gathered around, their eyes shining with hope. "You are leaving," Oliver said softly, his voice gentle but full of emotion. "The valley is whole again, Emma. It's time for you to return to your world, but don't forget what you've done here. This valley will always be part of you." "I won't forget," Emma replied, her voice steady despite the bittersweet feeling rising within her. "And I'll carry it with me, always." The valley had been her home for such a short time, but it had changed her. It had taught her the importance of patience, of listening to the world around her, and of understanding that true magic came from within, something deeper than spells or crystals. It came from love, from connection, from healing. Emma glanced around once more, her gaze lingering on the familiar paths she had walked, the trees that had guided her, the creatures who had shared their wisdom with her. There was no doubt in her mind that the valley would thrive, that it would continue to grow, and that its magic would live on in every leaf, every river, every breath of wind. "Take care of it," she said quietly, her voice full of affection. "Take care of each other." The creatures of the valley nodded, and Oliver stepped forward. "You've given us the greatest gift, Emma. We will protect this land, keep its spirit alive, just as you've done." The firefly buzzed one last time, then flew upward, its tiny light growing smaller and smaller until it disappeared into the brightening sky. Emma watched it go, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for the little creature that had guided her through the valley, through her doubts, and into her destiny. "It's time," she whispered, turning toward the path that led out of the valley. The journey home would not be the same as the one she had taken to get here. Emma knew that. She had grown, learned, and changed in ways she could never have imagined when she had first set foot in this magical land. But the road ahead was one she was ready to walk. She had carried the valley's spirit with her, and now it was time to bring that peace, that healing, back to her world. As she began to walk, Oliver fell in step beside her, his presence comforting and familiar. "The valley's magic will always be with you," he said softly. "Even when you return to your world, you'll still carry its light within you. It's part of who you are now." Emma nodded, a soft smile crossing her face. She had already felt the connection, the bond to the valley, woven into the very fabric of her being. No matter where she went, no matter what challenges she faced, that connection would never fade. It was as much a part of her as the love and wisdom she had found within herself. The journey back was quiet, filled with the sound of rustling leaves and distant bird song, a peaceful symphony that matched the calm in Emma's heart. As they walked, the valley slowly began to fade behind them, its wonders and secrets now tucked safely within her memory. The path ahead was uncertain, but she no longer feared it. She knew that, just as she had learned to trust the valley, she could trust herself. The world beyond was waiting for her, and she was ready. After what felt like hours, they reached the edge of the valley, where the trees began to thin and the land opened up to the wide, rolling hills beyond. Emma turned one last time to look at the valley, her home for these past months, her heart full of gratitude. "Goodbye," she whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. "Thank you." And then, with a final glance, she turned her back on the valley and stepped into the open world, knowing that the journey was never truly over. It had just begun again. As the sun continued to rise, casting its golden light across the hills, Emma felt a deep sense of peace settle within her. She was homeward bound, not just to a place, but to the person she had become, the person the valley had helped her find. And with every step she took, she knew that the light of the valley, the magic of its heart, would always be with her, guiding her, just as it had always been. The journey home was not the end. It was only another beginning. And with that, Emma smiled, ready for whatever lay ahead.